So I'm going to get started. Before I tell you more about the project, I want to start by providing a brief history of the early schools. Most of these schools would have been operated by Quaker schoolmasters, and they were often held, classes were often held in barns and in churches. So at this time, the parents would have paid a subscription fee for the attendance of their child. So schooling in the 18th and early 19th century was really only attainable for the wealthy. In 1834, the Free School Act was signed into law by Governor George Wolfe. And that's really the start of the common school movement here in Pennsylvania. And it's when education became attainable for all. So this law required each township to establish and maintain a system of free public schools. And it wasn't compulsory. It allowed residents in each district to vote on whether to adopt the new act or whether to continue under the School Act of 1809. So you can kind of see in the table here, I know it's a little blurry, but there were 3 townships in Cumberland County that rejected the act in 1934. And those townships were Brentwood, Monroe, and North Middleton Township. Now, there was a lot of opposition to the Free School Act. Some viewed a public education system to be a threat to their heritage. The old aristocratic families held on to their beliefs of class and privilege, and they didn't support the concept of equality in education. The Quakers, they wanted to keep their schools free from government control, and others simply didn't want to pay the taxes involved in supporting the school system. So we see some of that opposition here in Cumberland County, but by 1836, all 18 districts approved the provisions of the new law. So learning in the one-room schoolhouse focused on the subjects of writing, reading, arithmetic, or otherwise known as the 3 R's. So most learning occurred through rote memorization and recitations. And on a typical day, the younger students would have been called to the front of the class to recite their lessons, while the older students worked on assignments at their desks. And there were very few books in these early schools. Many of them only had a Bible, a dictionary, and maybe a few textbooks. Some of the most popular textbooks in these early schools included the New England Primer and its successor, the McGuffey Reader, which I have pictured here. And these books contain poems, stories, and syllabaries that included lessons on religious and moral principles. So here we have a photo of the Locust Point School in Lower Frankfort Township. So this picture was taken in 1953, shortly after the organization of the Big Spring School District. And I wanted to share this with you so you could see a typical classroom layout in a one-room school. All these students, grades 1 through 8, you can see that some of them were sitting 2 or even 3 to a desk. The younger students would have sat in the front, while the older students were seated in the back. And at an even earlier time, the students likely would have been divided, with girls on one side and boys on another side.
Probably graduated high school with most of those.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite a connection.
Yeah, I think that's about right. So back to the mapping project. The first thing I did when I started my research was compiling a list of schools, and these are some of the sources that I used. The 1872 Beers Atlas was especially helpful because it provides a name of all the schools and their districts. In the late 1800s, Jeremiah Zemer began printing an educational column in the American Volunteer, and that included a list of all the schools at that time. And I also use educational directories from the collection here at CCHS dated from 1895 to 1957, and that's one of the last one-room schools post. All right. So I was very surprised to find that early on in my research that a similar project was attempted by CCHS, then better known as the Hamilton Library Association. A book titled Schoolhouses of Cumberland County, Pennsylvania was exhibited at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. And this was the first volume in what was to be a series of books documenting schoolhouses across the county. The newspaper article, I know you can't really read it, but it basically says that the Hamilton Library Association is requesting photo submissions from of these schools. Unfortunately, I don't know if they didn't give many submissions, but there were no subsequent volumes of this book ever published. I kind of view my project as a continuation of this, maybe 120 years later. So here are a few pages of the first volume that we still have here in this collection. On the left and the right, we have two nearly identical first schoolhouses in North Middleton, and then a very early schoolhouse in Upper Allen. And this likely would have been operating before the free school act in 1854. And here is a photo of my completed map of all the schools. So the points are all organized by their districts. And I left little slips of paper with QR codes and a URL to this project so you can access the whole map. If you want to click on your way out, you'll be able to see the names of all these schools and the pictures. I have a lot of pictures of and information. This is still a work in progress, so I'll be adding more information in the weeks to come, so please check again.
Are you able to reverse to the other previous slide? So hard to see, like the location of these, like more specific.
I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head, but I have them all plotted on the map.
I just stairs get.
I believe it says stairs gap for. But if you go to the website, you'll be able to see a map and it'll show you exactly where it's at. So the focus in my research was on public 1- and 2-room schools in Cumberland County. I included 2-room schools because they operated much like their 1-room schoolhouses. The 2-room schools typically included a separate primary and grammar school for grades 1 through 4 and 5 through 8 respectively. So the last 1-room schools to close in Cumberland County were in Monroe and Middlesex townships in December of 1957. Penn and South Middleton were the first townships to start consolidating their schools in the 1920s. And there were no consolidation efforts during the Depression and World War II, but after World War II in the 1950s and 1960s, we see school jointers began, and that's when our present-day school districts were formed. Many of these 1-room schoolhouses were sold and converted into private homes. Some of them are churches and businesses as well. And through the course of my research, I was able to find 105 standing 1-room schools in Cumberland County. So I want to share a few photos of the schools, what they look like then and what they look like today. Here we have the Graham School. This school is located at the corner of Winding Hill Road and Market Street in Mechanicsburg. It was part of the Upper Allen Township School District, and this building is now an insurance agency. Next is the Pine School in Dickinson Township. It's now used as a social hall for the Barnett's Methodist Church.
That is mine. And right there, my over attended that. Mr. Ralph here.
Very nice.
A lot of stories to tell about that.
Oh.
You know what you're getting.
So the following schools are all private homes. Many of them still have the distinct schoolhouse look, while others are barely recognizable. This is the Oak School. It's on Rockledge Drive in Carlisle. And Rockledge Drive.
I'm gonna try to find you.
Well, that's why you'll have to go to the map. So this was a school in the South Middleton School District. Also in South Middleton is the Bonnie Brook School. It stands on Bonnie Brook Road in Carlisle. And in Southampton Township, we have the Pine Road School. It's located along Airport Road in Shippensburg. Do we have any Shippensburg people here today? No Shippensburg, okay. So the photo on the left shows a flag raising at the school in 1910, and the photo on the right shows the former schoolhouse today. This is the Willow Grove School in North Middleton Township. And this stands on the intersection of Willow Grove Road and Easy Road. Next up is the Mount Zion School in Upper Frankfort Township. It's on the corner of Mount Zion and Campground Roads.
Yeah, Sean. Oh, right away, in the house, turned it into that. He covered his stone. Yeah. And another one family lives there.
And finally, we have the Center Square School in Upper Allen Township. And this is on West Elizabeth Road. So, if you're a local history buff, you're probably familiar with this church in Camden Township. It's on the corner of Trindle and St. John's Church Road. And there was a schoolhouse there, aptly named the Stone Church School. Actually, there were two schoolhouses. So the bottom photo shows the first schoolhouse on the property, and above is a class photo that was taken shortly after the construction of the second school building in 1902. You can see the dates up there, 1797 to 1902. So, the Stone Church School actually predates Stone Church. It was built in 1797 by a German Reformed congregation, and it was used both as a school and for religious meetings until the church was completed the following year. The first schoolhouse was made of log and included a small apartment for the teacher. And here I've included a quote from a former student at a reunion held here, and he says, "I remember whenever that bell would ring in the morning, the first thing the teacher would read from the Bible, and then we would say the Lord's Prayer and pledge allegiance to the flag. This is something I remember all through my life, and it's of my opinion that we would probably be better off if we had that today in schools." So This school was operated by the congregation until the Preschool Act of 1834. And after the Preschool Act, it was leased to East Pennsboro Township School District and later Hampton Township when the two townships broke up. So in 1902, the schoolhouse was torn down and it was replaced by the brick building, which you see in the back here. The Stone Church School closes in 1931 after consolidation of the schools in Hampton Township. And I'll share this quote with you because this one is one of my favorites. The times were a little tough. I remember that there was not enough money to buy a pencil sharpener. The boys had to sharpen the pencils with their pocket knives. That's when we could bring pocket knives. So next up is the Anderson School. The school is on Mexico Road in Silver Spring Township. And like many one-room schools in rural Cumberland County, most of the students at the Anderson School lived on surrounding farms. Many of them would have been needed for chores in the warmer months, so they couldn't always attend class. And typically, in the one-room school, a school year began the last week of August and ended in March or April. They had less holidays, it seems, though. And pictured below is a class at the Anderson School, and I want you to pay attention to the teacher in the front, because I'm going to mention him in my next slide. Anderson School closes in 1954 after Silver Spring joins the Cumberland Valley School District. The students were transferred to Silver Spring Elementary School in December 1954. And back to that teacher, his name was Frank Hare, and he was teacher at the Anderson School from 1934 to 1940. And in 1990, Hare holds a reunion for former students of the school. And an article related to that reunion here says the one-room schools were far from perfect. The school was in desperate need of supplemental materials. There was no art teacher, there was no traveling library, no music instructor, and the textbooks were old and outdated. But there was also a sense of community in these schools. He says, the children took care of each other. The older ones helped their younger brothers and sisters, combing their hair, wiping their noses, even checking on them when they came back indoors from using the outdoor toilets. And here's a photo of the Anderson School as it stands today. Speaking of the toilets, this is where you go to the bathroom if you attended a one school. This is the Bonnie Brook School in South Middleton Township. Most of the schools had two outhouses, one for the girls and one for the boys. And this photo really makes me appreciate the conveniences of modern day plumbing, especially in the snow.
Yeah, that's the one.
Next, we have the Warner School. It's located at the corner of South Middlesex Road and Warner's Road, and is part of the Middlesex Township School District. Middlesex eventually joined the Cumberland Valley School District in 1952, and 5 years later, in December 1957, the former school closes. These students were transferred to Middlesex Elementary School, and the former schoolhouse was demolished in the 1960s.
Notice that everybody's wearing coats.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there.
No, they are.
That's it. So before the school closed, James Steinmetz took several photos of the former schoolhouse. On the left here is one of those photos. So these are students eating lunch at the corner school. Most of these students would have ate at their desks. But some of them would even go home for the hour if they lived nearby. The next photo shows a newspaper article that was written shortly after the closing of the school. It reads, "As the children filed from the building, there appeared few happy faces, for even though they were entering a new and modern school building, they were leaving one which even the smallest of the pupils loved." And I just wanted to say, I just recently spoke with a woman whose father taught at one of the one-room schools in Monroe Township. And he was transferred to the consolidated school in Cumberland Valley School District. And he said that the first day of school, many of the kids, especially the younger ones, spent the day crying and afraid. And this is understandable because it was a big change to go from the one-room school where you had a single teacher and a couple dozen students that you would have essentially grown up with. Here are a couple more of the Steinmetz photos I mentioned. The student on the left is filling the stove. The students on the right are bringing water back to the school. There was no plumbing, so the students would have gotten their water from a nearby farm. And these were chores that were typically reserved for the older boys.
Do you know what road this is?
Corner school is South Middlesex Road and Corners Road. Yes. Yeah. So next up, we have a very interesting schoolhouse. This is the Octagon School in Newburgh. It's located at 2nd and Exchange Streets. This is the only non-rectangular schoolhouse in Cumberland County. And it was the first public school in Newburgh. So we know the property was sold to the Hopewell School District in 1839, I'm sorry. But the date of construction for the school remains unclear. Some data is laid back as the 1780s, and some believe it was built after the purchase of the property. In 1855, the school was closed and the building was sold. The school district cited the premises inconvenient for school purposes. So the schoolhouse has 8 sides, 7 sides with windows, and on the 8th side was the door. The teacher's desk would have sat in the center of the room near the stove. The students sat on benches facing the windows. And there was a pond on the property that the students used to ice skate in the winter months. Legend has it that the students played a game called Revival Meeting, and they would baptize their converts on the top. And this schoolhouse is still standing, it's now a private home. Our next school brings us to Dickinson Township. This is Farmers Academy School. And the top photo here shows the class in 1920. And on the bottom right, we have the class in 1953. To the left of that is a present day photo of the school. This schoolhouse is located on West Old York Road in Dickinson Township. It was built in 1840 and is thought to be one of the earliest brick schoolhouses in the county. The school closed in 1954, and its students were transferred to North Dickinson Elementary after Dickinson Township joined the Potbelly School District. Here I've included a quote from a former Farmers Academy teacher. It reads, There was a closeness in the one-room schools, which was lost when we went to consolidated schools. You became very close with the children. Families were more interested in their education and got closer with the teacher at that time. And this is a sentiment shared by many who attended the one-room schools. Teachers were very close to the students and their families, and sometimes even the parents would drop by and sit in on class unannounced. So I read some teachers mentioning that they would pick a student up on the way to school if they saw them walking on the side of the road. And some teachers even went to their students' homes to eat dinner with their families. So this is a very close-knit community. Next is the State Road School, and this is one of the most intact one-room schools still standing in the county. The only thing that I believe that's been replaced is the stove in the middle there. So this school is on Dudley Gap Road in Lower Mifflin Township. It replaced an early Latin grammar school that was started by Presbyterian settlers in the area. And the present-day schoolhouse was built in 1874. The school closed in 1955, and the students were sent to the new Mifflin Elementary School in Big Spring. Today, the schoolhouse is owned and maintained by the town of Lower Mifflin Township. And since its closure, it's been used for reunions and group tours. I believe they open it up once a year to the public. The photo on the left here shows former students at one of these reunions. And a 1973 article in the Sentinel described a typical day at the State Road School. It reads, "A typical school day started at 9 a.m. with morning lessons followed by a recess from 10:45 to 11 a.m. Favorite games played by boys and girls included draw base, shooters, fox and geese, all involving a lot of running, chasing, and tagging. The classes resumed until the lunch hour from noon to 1 p.m., which proved to be the big social event in the daily life of rural school children. Classes resumed after lunch with afternoon recess from 2:45 to 3 p.m. and school let out at 4 p.m. So our next school is the Pine Grove School in Pine Grove, Vermont. And there were two schoolhouses here. The earliest mention of a school was an advertisement for teachers in 1813. Now we know that the first schoolhouse was built of stone. And sometime between 1858 and 1872, the school was relocated to Quarry Road and a brick schoolhouse was built. That school closed in 1932 and the building was subsequently demolished, as you can see in the photo. And I just thought this was a really fun photo. It shows a horse-drawn sled that was used to transport the Pine Grove Furnace children to school when it snowed. So before the consolidated schools, school transportation services didn't really exist. But most of the children would have lived within a couple miles of the school, so they would have walked uphill both ways. But and here we have Rocky School. The school is in Dickinson Township. The photo on the bottom right is one of our line photos, and it was taken around the turn of the century. And to the left is the former school today. This school is located at the corner of Half Mountain Drive and Myerstown Road. It dates back to 1870, when the land was deeded to the school district, and it closed in 1947. Later, the building was sold and converted into a home, and that home is now listed on the Cumberland County Register of Historic Places. So next up is the Mount Jackson School in Hopewell Township, and it was also known as the Potato Point School. This school stood at the corner of Potato Point Road and Enola Road in Hopewell. It was built in 1865 on the Samuel Myers farm, and the school closed in 1954. The students were transferred to Hopewell Newburgh Elementary School in the newly formed Shippensburg Area School District. And the Mount Jackson School stood vacant until Myers donated the building to Shippensburg University in 1968. The Alumni Association raised funds to cover the relocation of the school to the campus, and the building was dedicated in 1970. Today, it hosts educational programs related to one-room schools. And finally, our last school is the Bloserville School. It's located on Boatman Drive in Upper Frankfort Township, and the school was built in 1881. It replaced an earlier log schoolhouse in Bloserville. In 1882, the school had an enrollment of 65 students. Can you imagine 65 students in a single room? So it was quickly realized that they would need more space, and that year an additional classroom was built on school, making it a two-room schoolhouse. You can see the two entrances here in the top photo. On one side was the primary school, and on the other side was the grammar school. And the Bloserville School closed in 1955. The students were sent to the new Frankfort Elementary School building in Big Spring School District. And the school is now a church. I think I heard somebody say which church. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the church. So I'm going to wrap things up here. I want to take the time to thank you all for coming, and please check out my project for more photos and information. You can also contact me if you have any stories or information that you'd like to share. Before I go, I'm going to play an oral history interview from Shirley Fleischman, who attended the Bloserville School. And these oral histories were done by high school students in the Big Spring School District in the 1990s. We have them here in our collections at CCHS. This is about a 25-minute video, so I'm going to ask anyone, do you have any questions or stories you would like to share before I start the video? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. How many rooms will one-room schoolhouse? So I see 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of us. Is that all? There are 4. You're not close. Here's my question, and I'll ask this to the 4. When you went to the school, and I don't know who advised this, but I went for 6 years. And I went to the school in Barnes High School.
Oh.
And I had 1 year at Mount Sarah, which was the room that came out from King James, there was a school club. But I remember when I went to the school, and I don't know who advised me, but if, I'll stand up here for you. Is that all right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely.
I think, and if you had to go to the bathroom, you put your hand up, but you had to put up either one finger or two fingers. Now tell me, Ronnie Brown, who I went to school with at that time, what was the difference in 1 and 2?
Well, one you had to pay and two you had to do.
Okay. Now, why do you think the teacher had to know if it was 1 or 2? What did she care? Because she had 6 classes to take care of. But that was the one that I always asked people, why did, so how much like she wanted to know how long we were, well, she didn't care how long you were doing it. If you did one that, and I heard this lady say something when we went out at recess. You had like 40 kids, and we all could play the same game. So it was called tickly, high over. Did you follow that?
We threw the ball over the roof of the school. We had 2 teams, one on each side. And we threw the ball over. And somebody caught the ball. And you all ran because the side that caught the ball, all of those could tag you. And then
So you would be caught. And that's, I remember, Ronnie, is that right? Tickly, high over?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
So he was too young to run, and the older kids would pick him up.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. And I heard everybody give a little groan when you said you couldn't take a knife to school. Well, let me tell you what we did. I lived in a farm about a mile from the school, and we, in the wintertime, would set traps. We set a trap line. And as we left the farm and we walked to school, we walked the trap line. And with a .22, I had that. And if we caught a skunk, or we caught a possum or a weasel, I would shoot it. And we'd carry it close to the school, but we wouldn't take it all the way in. We'd hide it so we could get it on the way back. And I would take my .22 in to the house school and put it behind the door. Scary, isn't it, huh?
With 8th grade, the ones I went to were first through 8th.
Yeah, 1 through 8.
And then high school started 9, 10.
Yeah. And the other one, I always harassed the girls. The girls would always go in early. And we had a pencil sharpener up in Barnes. The girls would always sharpen all the pencils for the teacher. Yeah, Barbara, that's another.
And when you got a brand new yellow pencil, it had not been sharpened.
Oh, yeah.
That was weird.
And Mrs. Hanshew, she had this class of 6, well, there was 8 when I first started, and then went down to 6. But Mrs. Hanshew would be holding the classes, and she, whatever class she was dealing with. And if you got a little rowdy, which I did with one of my buddies, there was all, oh, by the way, I was so pleased. I was always in my class, in my 6 years, I was always first or second.
Pretty good.
What's the question? How many in class? 2. And Mrs. Hanshew would have these pencils sharpened, real sharp, and the boy's name was Harold Bixler. He was a Bixler boy from Barnes, and both the same age and they're both the same badness. And she would walk around, and if you were bad, she'd your head was turned the other way. You'd be like that, she'd come walking up behind you, and with the point of the pencil, she'd go, you got me in the head.
I only had male teachers, and they never did that.
Well, but this lady did. All right, you have something you want to say?
Well, I'm the next generation from these two guys.
Okay.
And you saw about Mrs. Ashford, Miss Ashford, and taught at the farmer's school, and loved it, what Miss Ashford. They were still teaching in the sixties when I attended North Dickinson.
That was that right?
Yeah, they taught in one-room schoolhouses, and were still teaching in North Dickinson in the sixties, and I,
Oh, wow.
Actually, Dad, you should tell the story about the guy who went around to distribute pencils.
I don't want to be invited.
I can give you the mic if you'd like.
Well,
I love stories.
I'm a little older than Paul Brown.
what do you say?
No, it's not.
Not much.
Well, I went to my high school, or they should have picked from it. There's now our school. My parents took me to church there in 1937, and they still go there today to church. The school house is located right back to the church, and we use it for a civic. But anyway, the story I'd like to tell. We had all farmers for school directors back in the day. I started at Pine School in 1939. I was 5, and I hated school. But anyway, I had to go. So, at the first day of school, Lawrence Weary, who was a farmer along the York Road, real close to that Farmers Academy school, would come in his old dog four-door. They had a big family. And he would come up to the door of the school and knock on the door. And the teacher would answer. And he would say, "How many students do you have this year?" I never saw Lawrence smile. He was always business. And she would say, 25, or whatever it was. It's usually around that. And he would turn around and go out to his car and count out 25 pencils, 25 tablets, and 25 spelling tablets. They were these little narrow, longer tablets. Anybody remember them? He'd bring them up to the door, hand them to the teacher, and say, "How are your books?" And she might say, "Well, I have a 5th grade reader. That's not the best." And he'd say, "Let me see it." She'd bring it to the door and he'd say, "That was the one." Mine is all. I don't remember ever getting a new book while I was playing out of school. By the way, I went 8 years to school. Whenever I was in 6th grade, you could go to Carlisle in 7th if you wanted to, but if you didn't go in 7th, you had to wait to go in 9th into Carlisle. And everybody in my class, except 2, one was Jay Rauch and me. We were the only 2 in 8th grade. Everybody else decided to go to Carlisle. So I went there. Now, Lawrence Weary come back the day after Christmas and done the same thing. One day in 1st grade, my pencil, you know, the seats are a little curved in those. I stuck it under and it broke. I was in the first seat in 1st grade, little weedy, narrow 1st grade desk. And teacher heard it crack. She heard it. And she come over with her black strap. Remember that song? That was a line off the long teeth for the clutch. He carried it around and scared the daylights out of everybody with it. By the way, He didn't give me another pencil, I didn't bring one from home. He only had 21. So anyway. I keep one for them.
Say it once again.
Absolutely. Would you like the mic?
Yes, please.
They often planted oak trees near one of the schools because raised oaks from little acorns grow. Right. Acorns grow.
All right, well, thank you for those stories. Does anyone else have any questions before I start this oral history? Okay.
Just real quick, the map that you showed in the presentation that had all the schools, is that on the?
So it's on little slips of paper on the back here.
Am I not?
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
So it's in here, the map is in here somewhere?
Yes, it's right at the beginning. If you scan either the QR code or type in the URL, you'll get the map to come up. And I have lots of pictures and information on there too, so.
How were the teachers sort of determined?
I think they were elected by the school board. They would have been elected by the school board.
Similar to, like, now you
Months today.
Yeah.
That's